All right, welcome back to drawing, everybody. So for this video, I'm going to be doing the full demo of pastel drawing with, making my self-portrait with pastels. So what I want you to take away, even though I'm drawing the exact same, portrait image that I did for the charcoal video, the principles in this are going to be the same as for any other pastel drawing that you do, okay? So we're going to want to go from dark to light as opposed to light to dark. So we want to start with our darkest values, our darkest tones. And I also want to pay very close attention to my complements. So as you can see, my pastels here are fairly basic in terms of, the colors that I have. So I'm probably going to be using most of these guys with a few little bits here and there just to punch it up. But it's important to note that when doing this, when working with color, we want to consider our complementary colors. So, red and green are complements. So, if I mix a little bit of green into red, it will brown it down just a little bit, make it darker, but we're making it darker while also making it chromatic. So, it's not just flat like if I added black to it. Vice versa, orange and blue are complements, yellow and purple, etc., etc. And it's the same no matter if I'm using, more neutral, kind of earthy tones, or if I'm using more, vibrant colors. So, for instance, I'm probably going to use this kind of fleshy tan color for portions of my skin tone. However, in some of the areas that have this kind of purpley gray quality, not only will I probably use some of these, kind of reddish pinks, but I'll probably also throw in just a tiny smidgen of these kind of blues just to kind of tone it down. And hopefully you'll be able to really see that as I get going. Now, once again, for this, I'm probably going to use my charcoal pencil for bits of my black. I don't have a whole lot of black that's going to go on in this. So I'm thinking like the pupils of my eyes and things like that. And likewise, I don't have a lot of pure white. It's just a few little reflections here and there on my skin. So I'm actually going to use a Conte pencil as opposed to the pastel white that they provided me with. Now, I do that because, once again, this is more akin to the pastel consistency than the white charcoal pencil, which is a little bit more waxy, whereas this guy's a little bit more chalky. So the consistency of this is going to be much more similar to the actual pastels. Now, likewise, I've got my erasers. I've got my sanding block to be able to clean my erasers, which is going to be very important in this. If I do have to erase, I'm going to try really hard not to erase. However, if I do need to, there's that possibility, but I want to clean it off. And likewise, I've got a blending stump specifically for this, as well as some paper towel, which I'm probably going to be using to do my blending and smudging and smearing and whatnot. Now, I do want to preface that you guys are witnessing the first pastel drawing I've done in 11 years, okay? So, although I know the basic concepts, I am really out of practice on this. And, pastel drawing was never my forte to begin with. So we're gonna have some fun here with this today, okay? So that being said, let's jump right on in. And for this, I'm actually gonna start with the charcoal pencil, just on a few things, just to establish a kind of baseline. And then I'm going to probably jump in with my dark brown there. So let's just reestablish a few kind of marks here and there in my deepest areas. And I'm only going to touch just a few little bits here and there so that I know really about how dark I need to go. So this will give me a frame of reference against, say, my next darkest color, which is going to be the kind of darkest color in my skin tone, if you will. And right now, once again, I'm really not trying to push down very hard I'm really just kind of letting the charcoal kind of touch the paper, because I plan on coming back into this at some point as well. So, you know, after I kind of work in some of the color, I'm going to come back in probably on top with some more of this, you know, charcoal, and just these few little places to punch everything up, you know. So, that being said, once again, I'm just trying to do a few vague areas, and these are going to get kind of obscured some by the actual charcoal once again, or the pastel once I get going. So you'll see that here in just a second. Now, the other thing, as I mentioned in the last kind of intro to this, um, I am working on a piece of Reeves BFK once again. However, this time this is a piece of kind of natural gray Reeves BFK, and the paper was pre-toned this kind of grayish color by the company that makes it. I did not tone this with charcoal prior to starting this. So all of the lines that you see on this, though, that's the only charcoal that's on this piece of paper at the moment. So that's something else to keep in mind. And the reason for this is that when we're drawing in color, or when we're using color in general, if we're working on a stark white piece of paper, it can be very hard to really see just how inaccurate our tone might be. And so it's very easy to lose sight of it overall, whereas on the neutral paper the color stands out more, so we get a better feeling of how it actually looks. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, I've got my few little super dark areas that I want. Now from there, what I also want to do is I'm going to kind of touch my eyes a little bit first. Now, it's not evident in my photograph very well, or it's not super evident, but my eyes are actually a fairly light shade of blue in real life. They're kind of a bluish gray. But in this, they're fairly in shadow. So I'm going to start off with this kind of deep blue, almost a kind of Prussian blue, kind of purpley almost. And I'm just going to start laying in a few little bits. And because this is a square piece, and it's not, you know, filed down to a point, I want to be very careful in how much is actually touching, and everything like that. So I want to be very careful doing this. And the reason for that is that because I have so little of this, it's a very little piece. I don't want to shave this down necessarily, because that's going to it's going to take away a lot of material that I could be using for the drawing. So I'm just trying to be very careful in how I lay this in. I'm using the corners, you know, things like that. And I'm not really going to be afraid to go over my areas a little bit here and there. Like I said, I'm going to try to stay inside those areas, but it's really not going to be that big of an issue, because I'm going to work in on top of it. And I'm not pushing down hard with this. I'm just kind of trying to, you know, lay it in and fill it in somewhat. And in doing this, what I really want to do is kind of try to create this, well, I'm going to try to kind of be blocky with it, to be honest. So I really want the tones to kind of lay in somewhat blocky, and then I'll go back in and blend. So hopefully you'll be able to see that here in a minute when I'm not working on something so fine. So I just switched from blue to this kind of dark gray just to push that back some, and whatnot. And once again, I've got my blending stump. And I'm gonna kind of blend that in just a little bit across that. And we're probably gonna come back in and touch some of this stuff up here and there as I go as well, to make it more cohesive and what have you. And probably hit it with some charcoal here and there just to darken selected bits up and whatnot. So from there, I'm going to switch over to my burnt umber color. This is a very kind of dark brownish kind of color, and I'm going to just start once again laying in some areas that I see that are going to be in shadow. And I'm using the lines that I made in my drawing as a guide, but I'm also looking at my photograph itself quite a bit here, going back and forth, because I want to pay close attention to where I see the color, how much of it I see, where the intensity or like the most intense portions of it are, etc., etc. Because I don't want to go too overboard with any of this, especially right now. I want to, I want to kind of keep it a little bit subdued so that I have room to play with it as I go. So hopefully you can kind of see that I'm really kind of laying this in a more abstract kind of manner, especially as I get going here in a minute or so. Hopefully it will be more evident and everything like that. But I'm just trying to be careful. I'm not really going to worry about the background right now. I'm going to do the background at the end, and that way it'll help me clean up the edges and everything like that. So, bear with me there. But so once again, I want to pay close attention to where I see the colors that I see. And now, because some of this drawing is going to have colors that I don't necessarily have a pre-made color for, I'm also going to have to mix some of the colors on the drawing as I go. And so we'll see how I do that here in a minute as well. So once again, I'm trying to be very careful in, where I'm placing everything. And, I'm not trying to push down super hard or anything like that. And I'm trying to keep my hand away from it here and there, or pull it away, because the stick is fairly large and I'm trying to do little minute things, so I want to make sure that I'm not going over, or overboard I should say, where I don't need to be. So once again, I'm just going to kind of add a few things here and there. And some of these things will be obscured. Some of them will be darkened, lightened, all kinds of different things. So it's just something to keep in mind, that it's going to look kind of rough right off the bat. However, as we begin to refine it, it's going to all start to come together too. So that's something else, as you're doing this, don't get frustrated with it, because once again, like anything, there's a bit of a learning curve that goes into it. And, I myself am not the best pastel artist by any means. So if I can do it, you guys can do it too. No worries there. Now, I probably am going to come back to this color some in a little while, and that I'll come back and add some more things into it, and like the beard especially, so that we can really start to see, you know, where some of the main kind of you know, kind of colors and everything go. Or, you know, I'm going to use a different color to do the majority of the blocking, and then we'll use this for like detailing things. However, I'm going to indicate just a few areas of the shadow in the beard here and there, just so I know when I come back to it, you know, where things are going to be. And the other thing, like I've been drawing with the corner here now, but for these larger areas that I know are going to be, you know, more filled in, I can kind of use the side of it and just kind of loosely fill things in here and there. So now once again, I don't want to go too overboard with that yet, because I'm going to come back in with a different color on top of this here in a minute, and we'll kind of blend that in, and then it'll be kind of, you know, like everything, there's a little bit of back and forth that goes into this as well, so keep that in mind. Okay, so from there, I think what I want to do is switch over to my more of this kind of, you know, red ochre color that I've got, and I also want to use this in my shadows, but this time I want to use it in the kind of half-tone shadow. And once again, I want to be sparse with this because I'm going to add a little bit to it as well here in a minute to kind of make it a little bit more purpley, because these kind of purple tones will stand out against the kind of orangey pink tones that I'm going to use in the majority of my skin itself. So by having this kind of little bit of a reddish brown to begin with, that'll kind of, you know, pop up that little bit of purple where I want it here and there, and everything like that. And I'm probably going to come back in with some grays and things here and there as well. Things like that. And so once again, it's a lot of this is going to be kind of back and forth, and you know, doing little bits here and there, and kind of refining and what have you. So it's not super cut and dry. So I will ask for your forgiveness if I'm a little bit more quiet in this video demo, because once again, this is the first time I've done this in a very, very long time, and so I'm probably going to get lost in concentration and thought and everything here and there, but I'll try to kind of keep you informed on what it is I'm doing as I go as well. But you know, once again, I want to pay attention to like the little kind of half tones and things I see. I want to think about, you know, where, you know, what colors I see in my image, because sometimes it's very subtle, you know, and it's not something that's, you know, cut and dry, like, you know, flesh colored crayon. Like, none of us are actually one color of, you know, flesh colored crayon. It's, we're all made up of, you know, a variety of different tones and shades and things like that. So that's something else that we need to keep in mind, is that, you know, it's not so cut and dry like that. So here we can see I'm adding a little bit more to the beard here and there of this kind of color, which is a little bit more akin to what my beard is really like. But now I'm going to add more on top of this in a different tone as well. But once again, I'm trying to pay attention to the darkest tones that I see for the time being, and then we're going to get more into those lighter tones as we work our way up. So I'm gonna kind of lay in some things, then I'm gonna kind of blend, and then we'll kind of go back and, you know, lay in some things and, you know, go back and forth a little bit here and there. So bear with me. All right. So we can kind of see how that darker color can kind of influence that. Now, once again, we're going to go a long way with this. However, you can see kind of, you know, how messy this can be. So, you know, keep some paper towels and things handy for you. You know, it's going to make your life a lot easier here and there. All right. Now, let's look at this kind of pink color I've got now. Once again, right now, I'm gonna go a little bit over the areas, but I'm also working under the assumption that I'm going to bring my highlights back in on top of some of this stuff as well. So, it's not going to be, it's going to subtle out some more, I should say. All right. And so once again, as I apply this, I kind of want to do it in a little bit of a blocky kind of manner. And as I go, I'll start to kind of push a little harder with it too, here and there. I'm also trying to follow the kind of contours of my overall, you know, kind of sketch drawing and everything too. Now for the beard here, I'm gonna kind of blend this almost to the edge there, just because I, you know, think I'm going to, well, I want the edge to be softer, and that's gonna help with that. Let's give it a little bit in my cheek there. Now, also want to do a few areas here and there in my ear. And things like that. All right. Now from there, I'm going to take my blending stump and I'm going to get into a few of these kind of areas in my eyes and whatnot. We're going to smooth just a few of these things out here and there, so that as I start to work up with them, they're going to be a little bit more easy to kind of work into and what have you. I'm also kind of smudging a lot of my area here. Just to take down some of the intensity and kind of spread it out, which will give me a little bit more to work into here and there with some of it. All right. Now let's go back. I'm going to use a little bit of my gray again. Because this gray is a little bit on the blue side, which is kind of what I want. But I don't want a whole lot. I just want it just a little bit here and there. And I also want to obscure the white of my eye there some too. And so, you know, it might look like I'm kind of destroying everything I've been doing. But that's okay, because as I begin to layer up over some of this, it's also going to start to, yeah, we're going to pull it back out, if you will. All right. Okay, so from there, let's take my kind of orangey flesh tone. See what we can kind of do with that. Now, once again, here in a minute, because right now I'm doing kind of basic ideas of color. I'm going to come back into this with some darker tones, some lighter tones, what have you. And right now I'm just kind of trying to get the basic kind of idea going so that I know kind of where everything is and what's going to need to happen to it, and you know, what have you. So I'm going to leave some of my lighter areas kind of alone. I'll probably come in with another light tone here in just a second. But you can see I'm really not pushing down with this right now. I'm really just letting it kind of touch the paper and glide across. It doesn't take much. This stuff comes off pretty easy and everything like that. And so once again, like, I just went over my line a little bit there, but that's okay, because I'm also going to, you know, I've got my eraser and my paper towel, so I can kind of take things back out a little bit. Now, I also don't want to forget a little bit of my chest that's sticking out of the shirt there, and some things like that. All right, so let's set him aside again, and then let's kind of blend a little bit here and there. And so hopefully you can kind of see in this just how dirty your blending stump and your fingers are going to get with this. So, you know, keep that in mind, because you know, that's part of the fun of art making, is getting messy. But you know, you guys might not like to get all that messy. A lot of people I knew in school made fun of me because I'd sit there with my maul stick and be super precise and wouldn't get messy at all, and then they'd be wiping paintbrushes on their t-shirt and, you know, what have you. So a lot of it's personal preference. And you know, the other thing with this too is Um, I would highly encourage you guys to, look around out there, because although I'm going for kind of more naturalistic look with my pastel drawing, um, it's not the only way to go about doing it. Edgar Degas, the famous impressionist, did a lot of pastel drawings that are extremely beautiful. His use of color is immaculate. All kinds of things like that. So, feel free to find inspiration out there. I, might also encourage you, since, I have more of a cursory knowledge of this rather than a kind of expert or master level expertise. You might also look at, other people that do pastel drawings and see how they're doing it. There's no one right or wrong way to learn or anything like that. So just things to keep in mind. Now, I forgot a little shadow that kind of comes in on the on my earlobe, or the top of my ear there. I'm gonna bring it back just slightly. Okay, now I think from there, the other thing I want to do is add a little bit more dark to parts of my hair here and there, just so that they kind of stand back out again. And I'm going to do this kind of twofold. Now the other thing I want to do is lay in a little bit of this dark on the back side of my hair where it's more shadowed. And I can also start making some indications of where my hair is going to be, or rather I should say where little kind of indications of my hair should be. Okay, now from there, what I want to do, also want to bring a little of this color in here and there. And, once again, my hair being blonde is kind of a challenge, especially in this, to some degree. Okay. Now I'm going to switch over to another color, this kind of yellow ochre kind of color. I'm going to add a few things here and there in my face and a few things, but then I'm really going to use this in my hair quite a bit. Now you can see I'm kind of using this right now to help punch up a few things, a few of the kind of more subtle things that I see. So once again, I'm trying to pay very close attention to everything that I see in my drawing, or in my subject, I should say. And, I can already tell this is probably going to end up being a little bit more impressionistic than what I would initially kind of imagine it being, but that's all right. So once again, I'm going to kind of lay this in as a general. We're going to, you know, kind of blend it a little, and then we're going to work back into it. All right, so you can also see that just going over that darker area with this lighter color, I pick up a lot of that color. So that's something else to be aware of as you go and you do this. Sometimes what you can do is also wipe the edge of your pastel on a piece of paper towel or on your sanding block and things, and then you know, kind of clean it off a little bit before you go back into things. So once again, I want to kind of blur and smudge and blend a lot of this out. And we're going to add some complements and things here in a minute to start really bringing things together. Actually, I'll come back to this guy for just a second. All right. So let's also go back to my red. Just throw a little of that red in there. A little of that orange. So here in a minute, in fact, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use just a tiny bit of green. And we're going to go back and forth with this as well. So it might seem kind of weird right off the bat. But because I've got a lot of orangey reds kind of going on, the green has enough blue in it to take some of that down without doing a whole lot of damage. But we're also going to work back into it as well with some other colors. So this is where complements come in handy. So you can see that by just adding a little bit of this green here and there to a few of my spots, my color has jumped quite a bit, or at least I can see more differentiation in the color and what have you. And it's kind of almost taking on a little bit more of a purpley kind of feel as well. All right, so I'm going to set that aside. Once again, we're going to kind of blend it out somewhat. All right. Now from there, let's get a little bit more interesting. So this case, I'm going to take my kind of ultramarine blue. So it's kind of a deep blue, but it's not like a super vibrant blue, as opposed to like my, cerulean or, oh, I guess this would be more of a Prussian blue or whatnot. But I'm going to use this very, very sparingly. So I only really want just a few little bits of it here and there. And so I really don't want this to touch the paper all that much. Just a little bit. And once again, I want to pay close attention to the little things I see here and there, because those things will help to make the drawing more realistic. All right. So once again, it might seem a little weird that I'm doing this, or some of the colors I'm using right now, but in the end, hopefully it will start to be more evident why I was doing these things. So once again, I'm just trying to look at those little areas that I see. And because once again, I've got a lot of orangey kind of things that are happening in my skin tones, these blues will play off of those things. All right, so set that down, and I'm going to get my blending stump out again. To get into those fine little areas. So we can see that as the blue mixes with those kind of orangey pinks, that it's going to kind of gray down a little bit and give me that kind of more kind of quasi-purpley shadow that I'm looking for. Because I don't want it to be full-blown purple. I don't want it to be, like this guy right here. I want it to be more subtle than that. Once again, we're going to kind of go back and forth in this quite a bit as well. And so far, I really haven't used much of my pastel at all. I'm really just letting the pastel kind of touch the paper and glide across it. I'm not really pushing down yet because the solid quality of the image is going to come through layering these things up, or these colors up, and then blending them in and whatnot, what have you. So once again, it's all going to be kind of back and forth. somewhat. All right. A few little kind of quasi-gray things here and there. All right, so from there, let's start doing something. Let's start doing a few kind of highlighty things to bring some things back out. So, well, first off, I'm going to add just a few more punches here and there to a variety of things. Now, I'm going to go back to my pink and add a few more kind of pinky areas. Try to clean some of the excess stuff off my fingers, because the more I have, you can see it's all kind of muddy on there because it's all getting blended on my fingers. Well, that's also going to translate to the drawing as well. So since I'm using my fingers to blend a lot of this, I want to kind of wipe my fingers off from time to time as well. Okay, let's do one more round of blue. This time I'm going to switch over more to that Prussian blue and just add a few kind of tiny things here and there. And then we'll start to highlight, and then we'll really be able to start to see some of these things for what they are or what they should be. Now you might think it's kind of weird that I've been using blue and green in my hair, but mixed with some of these earth tones, it'll give that kind of golden sheen, or at least help to. And we're going to enhance it once again with some reds and highlights with lighter yellows and things here in a little bit. Something like that. that. Once again, it might look really technicolor right now, but as we start to add some finishing details and things, it's going to start to, kind of read more appropriately. Well, hopefully it will. But you can see that just by adding that little bit of blue into those kind of orangey, reds and whatnot, and then blending it out, it becomes more of a gray versus a kind of solid blue. And so we can perceive it or at least more as a gray. Okay, so I think we can start adding some highlights now to the skin, which will pop everything out, and then we can start to address some more of the kind of finer detail-y things here and there. So for that, what I want to do is I'm going to break out my kind of light fleshy kind of guy, and now I want to pay close attention to some of the lines and things so that I don't go overboard. I want to start picking out those highlights. And this is going to be a little bit of a back and forth process as well. Again, I want to pay close attention to what I actually see. Things like that. So probably gonna have to touch the ear up quite a bit. That's okay. Once again, there's a lot of back and forth that happens in this. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna set that aside. I'm gonna kind of wipe my blending stump off a little bit. I'm gonna try to use a clean side initially. And once again, we're gonna kind of start to blend some of this in. So you also see I'm kind of blowing it, the drawing off a little bit here and there. That's because the pastel sticks more to the top of the paper than, say, the charcoal does, or it doesn't get embedded in it as much. And so I'm getting these little areas where it kind of clumps up, or the dust clumps up. And so I'm just trying to get rid of some of that, or at least even it out some. That's also why I want to clean my blending stump off somewhat here and there, so that I'm not overloading it. And once again, this, charcoal we can sit there and work on for forever, but sometimes pastel, it just gets overworked and you gotta step away, spray fix it, and then come back to it. So when it starts to get to the point where you can't really put much more on, or you're having a hard time blending it and whatnot, well, that's probably about a time to spray fix and do a new layer. The nice thing is, the Canson Mi Tintas paper, you can spray fix a couple times, but it can only really go maybe 3 or 4 times total. Whereas the Reeves BFK, much more sturdy paper, you can basically put as many damn layers of the stuff on it as you want. There will come a point after, I don't know, 8 or 9, that it's probably going to start getting a little bit harder to have actual, or for it to hold actual pigment, but it might take quite a while to get to that point. Now, I'm going to start adding little punches of things here and there, just to deepen a few areas. So I'm not trying to do a whole lot with this. However, I do want a few things here and there. And then I'm gonna go back to my kind of burnt umber kind of color. And add just a few things here and there. And really going to add some more to the beard. As well as the main part of my hair here. Okay. I think the other thing I want to do is I'm going to take this light gray that I've got. I'm going to add a few areas of that just to knock a few things back. Okay. Just adding a little bit more pink here and there. Okay. Now, okay. I'm going to go back to this guy and kind of bring some of those highlights back out a little bit. And then we're gonna probably break out the white. The other thing, before I do that, I'm probably gonna work around and add a bit to the background so that when I add the white, we can really see how much more this is gonna need to go one way or the other. Okay, so before we start adding back in, let's also establish a few things elsewhere as well. So I'm going to start on my shirt down. Now my shirt in the picture might look black, but it's really a really dark blue. So I'm going to start with my dark gray actually. And I'm going to kind of redefine a few things and add in where the main shadows are. Okay. You also see that having that really dark kind of passage in front of it allows me to see the rest of this as, you know, more accurate and whatnot. So I'm also going to obscure the kind of edge of my beard some so that it reads more faded into that area. Okay. From there, I'm going to take the black itself just add a few things here and there. Now once again, I'm using the black pastel at the moment, but I'm probably going to use my charcoal to go back in on the face here in a minute as well. Alright, so from there, I'm going to switch over to my deep blue, my deepest blue. I'm just going to kind of fill in with that, those areas that I haven't yet. Alright, now you're gonna do a rough blend on that. You notice on that I just kind of blocked my shapes in. now I want to think about my background too, because my background is going to help complement the skin tones. And so by adding a complementary kind of tone, overall tone, I can help to pop some of those things out. Now, the other thing about your background is you don't really want it to be one solid color either. If it's one solid color, it tends to look very flat and everything like that. So we want it to have a little bit of variety. So I'm going to kind of go around. I'm probably going to do the majority of the background here in a little bit, but we're going to pop a few kind of colors in here and there just to see, you know, how they're going to work out. So do something like that. And screw it. Do something like that, and then think all right. Let's start with something like that for my background. I'm gonna pull off a little piece of paper towel here to smooth that out. I'm also going to flip this around on you so I can get to things a little easier here. So I've got a rough background in there. Maybe you can see that all just came off of my easel from stuff coming off of this. So once again, this can be very messy. So keep that in mind. I'm gonna have to clean my board and everything after this. All right. Now what I want to do, I want to start redefining some of my shapes and things, especially in my deep shadows. So I'm going to go back to my pencil for a minute. And I'm not pushing down it with this either. I am really just letting it glide across the surface there. And I'm going very lightly because I also want to come back in with some more pastel here in a minute, and then we'll kind of go back with the pencil and then back with the pastel. And so it's once again, it's a lot of back and forth. And it's a lot of, you go one way too far and you gotta bring it back the other way a little bit. And okay. All right, so from there, okay, well, let me redefine the ear just a bit, and then we'll move on. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to my burnt umber. We're going to start to darken some things even further. So I apologize for the quietness and whatnot, but I'm really trying to pay attention to these, little things I see here and there in my photograph. Okay. 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 So now Now that I'm starting to get a little bit more refined in terms of the details, and I'm starting to really try to pay attention to, you know, the little things, I'm gonna be a little bit less crazy in my overall blending. Now I am going to work on background just a little bit more as well. The goal of kind of smoothing it out a little bit more and settling it down some. And then we'll get back into the portrait itself. Now, once again, right now I'm really just letting the material glide across the surface. I'm not trying to push down on it, and in fact I'm kind of letting the stick of gray here kind of blend for me, if you will. I'll go back with my hand here in just a second and kind of smooth some of that out. However, once again, I don't want to use the same color for everything. So I'm going to switch over to my dark gray as well. Okay. Now, from there, I'm going to go back to my blending stump. So I can get a little bit more down into some of these things. Okay. Getting pretty close to starting to do finishing stuff now. All right. Now, let's start to do some highlighty kind of things. I'm going to start back off with this guy. Just for a few subtle kinds of things. All right. Now I gotta try to be real careful on the ear here so I don't overdo it again. Okay. Now. I go back to my stump. I can tell the paper is starting to get pretty saturated with the pigment because the pigment's coming off a little easier. And it's kind of just pushing around more than blending softly and things like that. So about to the point where I'm going to do some highlights on the face. some detail-y kinds of things and what have you. I'm gonna flip this over on you again. I apologize. Once again, this, because I'm working from a fairly limited palette, especially in terms of skin colors and whatnot, it's not going to be completely accurate. But we're trying to be as accurate as possible. All right. Okay. Now, let's darken a few things up real quick, and then we'll start to do some highlights, some shadows, and, or I'm sorry, some highlights and details. Okay. Okay. Now, starting to come together. Okay, so I think that's pretty well done. However, we're gonna add just a bit black here and there, not a lot. And we're gonna also come back in with some of that dark brown. Something interesting about blue and brown is that they tend to make black when they're mixed. Not all the time, but you can also kind of make it a black that's kind of a little bit more on the brown side and a black that's a little bit more on the blue side by mixing the two, which is kind of interesting. Something else you might play with. Okay. Now something too, you know, my portrait here is getting kind of pretty blended. However, you might want to go a different route where it's a bit more, you know, kind of impressionistic, I guess. In the painting world, what we would call painterly, where, you know, your marks are showing and it's not all smooth and blended and, you know, everything like that. If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. It's just going to have a little bit different look than this. That's fine. Okay, now let's start doing some highlights. I'm gonna use the white piece that I've got here, and I'm gonna go in very, very carefully because I don't want to overdo this. But you can see that right now I'm letting the white just kind of be, but I'm gonna blend it in quite a bit as well so that it's nowhere near as stark as it is now. got a big kind of highlight across my forehead there. And just a little guy there. All right. So that's probably about all of that I'm going to use. We're going to see how it looks blended out here in just a second. But we might add a little more. Now you can see that through handling all this stuff, my hands have gotten pretty dirty. So I'm going to actually try to blend with my pinky now because it's the cleanest finger I've got. Might even switch hands here and there. But I want to be very gentle and very careful while doing this. And I want to pay attention to the kind of general direction of my highlights and things, and try to kind of blend out that way. But the nice thing about having a little bit of this kind of blue and black and things on my finger is that it can also help to kind of subtle certain things down here and there. Add that little bit of chromatic gray into the kind of shadow half tones and things like that. Now you can see I've got a few things in my hair there. I'm going to leave those alone for just a second, and I'm going to break the blending stump out again here in a sec. Okay. Right now I'm trying to look at the areas with the most highlight on them. We're just going to punch them up just a little bit more. And then we're going to go back with that Conte pencil here in a minute and add a few kind of detail-y things. All right. Now, back to the blending stump. Take down a few of these little bitty guys. All right. Now let's also, I'm going to come to my kind of big thing of yellow ochre add just a few little kind of golden bits of my hair here and there. And once again, when you're doing hair, we really want to kind of make more of the impression of hair versus, say, trying to do every single hair on your head, okay? So think of it more in terms of like clumps of hair versus, say, individual strands and things. Now I'm also going to kind of start to add a little bit of highlighty details to the mustache as well. So once again, I'm trying to be kind of random with these. I don't want to be, too far one way or the other. We're going to add some dark ones here and there as well. Okay. So okay, let's do one more round of whites and just a handful of tiny places. And then we're going to add some dark details and we're going to call it quits. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my charcoal pencil and we're going to re-up a few kind of detail-y things here and there that I can't really get to with the the stick of pastel because it's fairly wide. really just letting the charcoal kind of glide across the surface again. I'm not pushing down, because if I started pushing down, I would start to pick up some of my pastel, and I don't want to do that. All right. So once again, I'm just in a few places here and there that I really want to be doing this. Okay. Once again, because I'm not pressing down super hard with the charcoal, it's kind of blending into some of my colors and things that I've got already. And therefore it's going to read as kind of a little more akin to the color that's there underneath it than the actual like black of the charcoal and what have you. All right, so let me also get my ear over here. All right. Also going to redefine the kind of back edge of my head here and add a few details. Into my hair here and there. Okay. Let's Just add a few more kind of detail-y things here and there to the beard. We'll do a few highlights, and then we'll do a little bit of cleanup around the edges, and we'll call it done. You can also probably see I'm trying to be very random in how I'm doing these things here and there. I also see something that needs to be fixed a little bit. Okay. Now let's add a few choice highlights here and there. Okay. Getting pretty close now. So let's do just a few small things. Here and there. So in this case, I'm adding just a little bit of red to that green background, which is going to kind of neutral it down a little bit here and there. Now let's also clean up the edge on the front side here a little bit too. little too far. So we're just gonna throw a few things back in there. Once again, a lot of back and forth that goes into this. And okay. And getting pretty damn close to calling it done. Alrighty. Let's do one more thing. And just and that's pretty much how it goes. So once again, I apologize, the video is probably going to be a little bit long, but this is pretty much how you go about it. So once again, you know, make sure that you've got a pretty nice drawing before you get going. You want to work from, you know, dark to light, and then it's a little bit of back and forth here and there. And you know, make sure that you watch your complement mixtures. So you know, green and red, yellow, purple, blue and orange. So you know, adding a little bit of the complement to a color can help to tone it down some. So, you know, remember in like the cheek here, we added just a tiny little bit of blue to that kind of orangey pink, and to get this kind of subtle gray and what have you. Um, you know, also be aware of, you know, how easily this smudges and everything like that. You might also, you know, keep in mind, um, you know, your overall color compositions and everything like that. You know, think about, you know, where things can be a little bit more ethereal, you know, such as in the beard that I have here. Obviously you guys might not have the same things, but you know, pay attention to those little subtlety kinds of things, and you know, where things can be a crisper edge, such as the edge of my face, versus a smoother edge like the edge of my nose, those kinds of things. Once again, all of these things will just help to add, you know, a greater sense of realism to your overall drawing and everything like that. So even just saying that, I can see just a few things that I need to touch here really quick, just to help pull a few things out here and there. I think that's gonna do it. So once again, you know, it's a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of you know, making sure that you're paying close attention to everything you see, everything like that. Um, Start with simple shapes, simple angles, and everything like that. Make sure your drawing is really well done, and then as you begin to, you know, kind of add your pastel in, you can kind of block it in general shapes and areas that you see, and then from there you can go in and you know, start to blend it, and then, you know, refine and add stuff and all kinds of stuff like that. So I almost forgot my buttons here. And bam, and there we have it. So thanks again for joining me. We'll see you again next time.